Was passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
Good disheveled afternoon. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. The show we talk about technology and quite a bit more. I say disheveled because I am. I looked in the mirror. I looked in the mirror and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I look like I'm dead. I look like a zombie walking around." I might be actually. I might have died. I don't know. I had a really bad trip yesterday, so I may have died. I don't know. But I'm. If you want to see how bad I look, you can go to the YouTube. Just go on YouTube and search for Hot News Talk Radio, and you can click on that, and you can see me in the live stream because we are very high tech over here at Hot News Talk Radio. So the tech news today is almost all E3. Don't worry, that's not what we're going to be talking about all day. But E3 happened this week. It's still happening this week, technically. Started on Sunday, still going today. I think it ends on Thursday or Friday. Haven't really been paying a whole lot of attention to the big brand stuff, which might sound a little bit weird because I am very into video games, but mostly I've been looking at the Bethesda stuff. I watched the Bethesda Showcase, which was astounding. It was amazing. Oh, man, Bethesda just took away the show with their showcase. And don't worry, we won't dwell on this for too long because I know not everybody's into the gaming scene. But just as a quick recap for anybody who missed it because they were working, I had the day off because birthday and everything. But Doom looks so good. I can't wait for Doom to come out. Fallout 4 coming out, I think November is what they said, November or October. Oh, man, can't wait for that. So Fallout 4 and Doom. And then we also have, there was something else that I can't remember now. Fallout Shelter is on iOS, which looks like a really, really fun mobile game. That's also come out, which actually makes me want an iPhone now. That's the only thing that's ever made me want an iPhone. So I may take a step into the other side and get an iPhone just so I can play Fallout Shelter because it actually does look that good. It looks like a really fun game, really fun, real casual game. So there's a lot going on in tech news other than E3, although you would never guess it by looking at the regular news outlets. If you look at Ars Technica and you look at The Verge, which I do every day, it basically you'd think that there's nothing happening except E3. E3 is the Electronic Entertainment Expo, by the way. It's where all the major vendors go to show off their wares. So if you are into games, you're probably watching E3 right now. But to recap, I think the Nintendo conference has already happened. If it's not happening, then it's happening today. If it hasn't happened already, then it's happening today. Nintendo World Championships, by the way, already happened. The guy who won, John Numbers, most nerdy guy I've ever seen, but hey, whatever. And it was John Numbers, and it came down to another guy whose name I can't remember now. And I think it's like Moby or something like that. And he got second place, and they both got signed Nintendo DS's by Shigeru Miyamoto. But anyway, enough about that. I'm getting a little bit too into my passion, which is my casual passion, which is video games. Next, I'll start talking about the Steam sale, which I spent way too much money on. Spent all my birthday money on the Steam sale. I bought Grim Fandango and Banner Saga. But anyway, so if you're into 3D printing, as I am, you may know about a 3D printed flute that now is a thing and actually works, and it hits the right notes. Something about music that probably you understand better than I do, because I'm no musician, is that music is a very precise thing. It's a precise science. Unless we're talking about microtonal music, in which case it's arguably more or less precise, because sometimes you have a more complex fretboard, sometimes you have no fretboard whatsoever, so it's either more or less complex depending on who you ask. But if we're talking about standard note, I'm not sure what the proper word is, but if we're talking about standard tuning and everything, then it's a very complex science, because if you're off tune, everyone's going to notice. So 3D printing a flute is a very complex thing and very exact science. You can't just 3D print a flute and sort of say, well, I hope it works. Well, researchers at Australia's University of Wollongong, according to the Gizmag, have created a number of 3D printed custom flutes, which can play microtonal tunings, otherwise unachievable with standard flutes, thus opening up a whole new series of notes to flute players. The same research could also lead to instruments which are easier for disabled people to play, such as myself, because I'm completely mentally disabled when it comes to playing music. I'm not sure what side of my brain I use most, but it's the one that has nothing at all to do with music. I really like music, but I can't play any music. So go figure. Now, microtonal, just to give a little bit of a recap, fortunately, I do know about a little bit about music, and I know that microtonal is notes which are in between the regular notes that we're all used to hearing. Right, so if you play notes on a piano, that's not all the sound that exists, right? Like there's lower notes than what's on a piano, and there's higher notes, higher octaves than what's on a piano. But there's also notes in between two notes that are on, or two keys on a piano keyboard, right? So you press, say, a key right in front of you on a piano, and you're playing a note, right? You play the key right next to that one, and you're playing a note as well, right? Well, there are actually notes in between that, because there are sounds in between those two keys, right? So there's a sound is a very complex thing based upon waves, obviously, and reverberation, and sound isn't technically sound until it hits your eardrums, and it's only a vibration until that point, and yada yada. But if we're talking about microtonal music, then there's a whole lot to be learned. In fact, look up microtonal music on YouTube. There's a really, really neat keyboard that's been built, and it's amazing. So check out Microtonal. That's Microtonal music on YouTube, and you can find a whole bunch of really interesting different instruments. There's a bass that's been built to be microtonal. There's a keyboard, and there's a whatchamacallit, a guitar, and there's a sitar, and all sorts of interesting instruments that have been built to be microtonal. So very interesting stuff. Well, now there's a 3D printed flute, which is in fact microtonal. So when it comes to instruments, musicians can be a conservative bunch. And we'd hazard a guess as Extreme Tech, or rather Gizmac, pardon me, that many guitarists would pick a handmade wooden axe over a new 3D printed alternative. For example, making a whole new series of microtonal notes, it asked smaller than a semitone available. The new research may offer a compelling reason for flautists to consider trying out a 3D printed flute. So yet more credence given to the 3D printed movement. I guess you might call it a movement. It is sort of a revolution in manufacturing. As it is now, manufacturing, or as it was until 3D printing hit vogue, manufacturing was very much in the hands of, I don't want to say big business, but bigger business than the individual. With a 3D printer, you can print out a CAD file and you have it in your hands within a few hours. Depending on the quality of your 3D printer and the size of the print head, or not print head, but the print surface and all those sorts of things, given proper circumstances, you can actually have an item that you conceptualize the last hour in your hands in the next few hours. So it's not a very difficult thing. As long as you know how to create a CAD file or download one and print one out, you can have objects that are in the real world within a matter of hours that you just got from the internet. So it's very, very fascinating stuff that 3D printers are allowing us to do. One of which, of course, is instruments. You can print actually a flute or a penny whistle or anything you want from a 3D printer. That's where things start to get cool, though, because you can print what otherwise would be impossible objects, like the impossible gears that have the bearings inside. You can print 3D puzzles. There's all sorts of really, really just fascinating parts that you can build with a 3D printer. So it's a revolution in manufacturing. Now, of course, there's always what everyone's afraid of, except for me, which is weaponry. Yes, you can print an AR-15 lower with a 3D printer. Yes, you can actually print a functioning firearm with a 3D printer. Now, there is some assembly required, and there are some metal bits that have to be put in, but nevertheless, you actually can build a weapon with a 3D printer. Now, assuming that someday we have 3D printers which can print ceramics and can get to be a print head which is extremely accurate, you could also print out knives that would be able to cut paper and such with ceramic. People keep saying that wouldn't show up in a airport. Yes, it would. With an X-ray scan, it would easily show a ceramic knife. It just wouldn't show up in whatchamacallit, I totally lost it, a metal detector. But you always get X-ray scans anyway, so they'd probably find the ceramic knife. But anyway, nevertheless, if you're going to go to that much trouble to hide a ceramic knife, probably you're going to do a good enough job that you can hide a steel knife without being detected either. So, but ceramic knives are definitely a possibility to be printed with 3D printers. There's all sorts of different possibilities. Car parts could potentially be printed with 3D printers eventually. right? We have laser sintering to print metal objects. We have all sorts of different methods of 3D printing that are much more complicated and much more robust than what's available for the consumer market right now. It's just that we don't have them in the consumer market right now. It's only a matter of time, right? Only a matter of time until we get these items that can be 3D printed, metal objects that can be 3D printed just in our houses. So it's only a matter of time, really. Now, this could bring manufacturing right down to the consumer level, which would mean prototyping available for anybody who wants to gather capital investors, who wants to get venture capitalists, I should say, all sorts of different objects or what's the word? I keep losing words today, and it's driving me crazy. Opportunities. All sorts of different opportunities are now available to you. Sorry, yesterday kind of hit me hard. So you can get all sorts of new opportunities that are open to you now thanks to the revolution, which is the 3D printer. So 3D printers have changed quite a lot, including music now. So to create these custom flutes, the UOW team, which again is University of Australia's University of Wollongong, the UOW team, pardon me, made a use of existing research data to mathematically plot the precise size the instrument must measure in order to create a certain tone, including its diameter and length and the placement of the holes. Data from modeling software was then fed into a 3D printing machine, and a custom flute was duly manufactured. So the Global Challenges Manufacturing Innovation leader, Professor Jeffrey Spinks, says there are huge possibilities for the future of this project. He says we can see many applications moving forward with areas like custom-made instruments for people with physical restrictions, student models for use by children where the instrument grows as they do, and customized instrument designs where alternative designs can be printed and tested prior to production, as well as print-on-demand options. Several flutes with custom tunings have also been produced and have featured in live theater performances all around Australia. Spinks further posits that the flutes could have the commercial potential and eventually lead to musicians being able to order flutes which offer a particular designed or desired microtonal tuning. And you can see and actually hear the flutes in use at the video, which is on gizmag.com. So definitely check that out. It's a very interesting video. It's really interesting to hear notes that you don't normally hear. It's sort of a shock when you're listening to music and you hear microtonal instruments because it's not like what we're used to hearing. Now, if you listen to traditional Indian music, I mean from India, obviously, music, then you might hear microtonal. If you listen to a lot of different Asian, classic Asian, what's the word? Traditional, I guess, Asian music, then you might hear microtonal as well, because in that region they didn't use really the, and yes, I realize India is in Asia, by the way, they didn't use standard tuning that we're used to here. We call it standard because Europeans are very high and mighty about how we do things, so we call it standard. It's standard for us, but not necessarily for other people and other civilizations. So listen to traditional Asian music and you will hear microtonal a lot, especially if you listen to some Indian music from India. You'll hear a lot of microtonal stuff. Very, very interesting. Microtonal singing is also very odd. Put it that way, very odd, but also very interesting. So it's worth listening to just to expand your knowledge, I guess. It's worth listening to just to expand your cultural knowledge of what other cultures do when it comes to music. It's just very, very fascinating to see what different people do and how they do things that we're so used to, like music. We're so used to listening to our music, and we often will listen to one genre or another, and that's sort of what we stick to. But to get out of our comfort zone and expand our way of thinking about music is very important to become, I guess, empathetic with other cultures and how they handle the arts. It's very interesting stuff. So definitely check out different traditional music from other regions, because they often will do things that different European artists wouldn't really think of. It's very cool stuff. I definitely recommend it. 10 out of 10 from IGN. Starbucks is expanding their mobile ordering system. So now it's in 21 states where you can order coffee, if you want to call it that, mobilely. Now, I am a little bit prejudiced towards or against, I guess, Starbucks. I'm not knocking it necessarily, and I'm not knocking people who go there, but I'm used to coffee of I don't want to say higher, but different caliber than what may be offered at Starbucks. Now, again, Starbucks, I'm sure, is a fine business, and the people who go there, I'm sure, are fine people, and there's a lot of work that can be done there. They have free Wi-Fi and all. I just can't get used to their coffee, though. I just can't, because I'm used to a different sort. I'm used to grinding my, I know it's very hipster. I'm used to grinding my own. I'm used to brewing my own. I'm used to sometimes gravity brews are actually kind of interesting. I'm used to French pressing my own. I'm just used to doing things on my own, and I get a little bit uncomfortable when someone else makes my coffee, as weird and spastic as that might sound. Because it feels impersonal to me. I know it's very odd, but I don't feel that way when I go to a lot of the local coffee shop. I go to Stone Cup and they make great coffee. I go to, what's the one? Velo, I think is what's called, downtown. They do delivery, by the way. I'm used to all these different local coffee shops downtown and on North Shore, and I go to Starbucks and it just feels so impersonal. But nevertheless, if you're into Starbucks, you can get it delivered to 21 states, and there are over 4,000 stores now which are delivering. So Starbucks, whose embrace of mobile payments and mobile loyalty in store, has already established the company as a forward thinker when it comes to new technology. And this morning, they've announced the expansion of their its mobile pay system to 21 more states, including 3,400 individual cafe locations across the United States. The feature allows customers to place their order and pay using the Starbucks mobile app, and then skip the line when they arrive at the store, as their drink or whatever else is already made. So this allows you to order something and then walk in and pick it up, basically. It's walk-in payment. You've already paid for it on your phone. You can walk in and pick it up. Now, I'm sure David Toulis of Nuganomics.com would have something to say about that, about how impersonal that is. And that's, of course, understandable. That is rather impersonal, isn't it? It's rather, it really takes the human element out of buying coffee. Coffee, to me, is a very social thing. I like making coffee for people. I like going to other people's houses and trying their coffees. I like being in a coffee shop and that whole environment. You know, I like being in cafes and such, with the whole environment. There's a lot to be said about coffee. There's a lot to be said about coffee culture. There's a lot to be said about it. And I can't really get into the whole Starbucks vibe, honestly. It's not just Starbucks. It's whatever else. You know, there's Barney's and there's all sorts of other different national chains for making coffee. But I just can't get into that vibe. But again, if you're into that, hey, cool. You know, there's no shame in that. I'm just not myself. I don't know. I'm weird, though. So today's expansion means that the feature is much more broadly available, as it now brings mobile ordering to a number of new locations across the Pacific Northwest and Southern and Central United States. Supported states as of today include Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, Virginia, Washington, and Wyoming. So you may notice that Tennessee is not on that list. How odd. Well, Georgia is on that list, which is odd because I can't think of a Starbucks that's close to my house. I live in Georgia. I can't think of a Starbucks that's close to my house. There may be one in Fort O. I'll have to check. I know there's one in Atlanta. So if you want to drive all the way to Atlanta to try out the mobile ordering and payment stuff, then you can do that if you want to. In total, there are over 4,000 locations that support mobile ordering, or more than half of Starbucks company-owned stores. Now, of course, that doesn't count the franchises and such. So this year, Starbucks says that the program will reach all of its company-operated stores, as well as expand to the Android platform. Today, mobile ordering is only available for iPhone users. So using the feature is simple enough. From the mobile app, you tap the order option at the top of the screen and then select the food and beverage items which you wish to customize and order. You then select the local store where you want to pick it up, and it shows the wait time for each item. Then you confirm your order, and the payment is then deducted from the Starbucks card that's saved in the app, if you have one. You can buy a Starbucks card, of course, from any of the stores. Some of the stores, like the one in Hamilton Place Mall, as far as I know, last time I checked, they do not take Starbucks cards. It's very odd. But the one in Hamilton Place would not take my Starbucks card for some odd reason. I had to pay with my credit card, so whatever. The company says the tests so far have gone well, despite some initial concerns about the technology from store managers and baristas. Today, mobile ordering is seeing consumer adoption for everything from quick coffee breaks, for office workers to busy moms with kids in tow, to commuters hopping off the bus and wanting to grab their drink quickly so we can get our bump of caffeine. caffeine's like Coke in a lot of ways. I don't mean Coke as in Coca-Cola. I mean like cocaine. Caffeine's a lot like that because you got to get your bump. We're all sort of going to the back room and getting our bumps and coming back. It's like the clubs, in the movies and Scarface and such, where they, they're like, hey, I'll be right back, baby. And they go to the bathroom and they get their bump of Coke and they come back and they're all dancing around. That's sort of what caffeine is to a lot of us. To me as well. I have to have it. I am addicted. I am very addicted to coffee. I get terrible withdrawals when I am not on coffee. And I know a bunch of people now who have gotten off of it. I don't know how they do that, but I can't. So if you're into mobile ordering, you can now do that from Starbucks, and you can get mobile ordering for coffee from Starbucks. And of course, you can also order bags of coffee that are not ground from all the different establishments. Look it up on Google, all the different Chattanooga establishments, which will send you bags of coffee weekly and monthly. Sometimes they'll have an ordering set up for that. So definitely check that out. Buy local.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am?
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The field of GOP presidential hopefuls gets its latest edition. Billionaire businessman Donald Trump making his formal announcement he's running for president.
And we are going to make our country great again.
Speaking from his Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in New York City, Trump promising to bring back jobs and put Americans to work. There's been a 6th death in the balcony collapse in Berkeley, California.
It appears that the balcony separated from where it connected to the outer wall, sending everyone who was on it tumbling down into the street. Others are said to be in critical condition, some with life-threatening injuries.
Fox's Claudia Cowan. And a man in Phoenix, Arizona, charged with helping plan the attack on a Prophet Muhammad contest in Texas, which left 2 shooters dead. An indictment alleging he hosted the gunmen in his home and provided the guns they used in the May 3rd shooting. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Do you put a whole lot of thought towards cybernetics? Well, maybe you should actually, because cybernetics seem to be the hot topic for a lot of us in the tech industry. Not to say that I'm heavily involved in the tech industry. By no means do I work for a tech giant. I'm not working for a Fortune 500 company or anything such as that. However, I like to have my finger on the pulse of the tech industry. Now, I can't predict trends because nobody can, but I can say that it seems that a lot of different companies are looking at cybernetics in a way that it would have been unprecedented just a few years ago. So cybernetics are something that's something that a lot of people consider to be very much science fiction, not something that people really think about when they think of the future of technology in a practical sense. Yeah, we think about it a lot when it comes to science fiction, but we don't really think about cybernetics or cyborgs or anything such as that in any sort of practical way. Maybe we should, because now it's looking like different companies are actually looking at this very seriously. Google being one of those companies. Google, it's now looking to patent smart contact lenses for iris fingerprint detection. Now, cybernetics are actually not anything new for a lot of people. Look at amputees as an example, or not even amputees, but people who are born without certain limbs. There are now pieces of technology available which can connect to your nervous system for you to control a bionic limb. Now, does that make you a true cyborg? Not necessarily. It depends on who you ask. But the definitions differ depending on who you ask. So it changes from person to person. Kevin Warwick is often cited as the world's first human cyborg. He implanted an RFID chip under his skin in order to control different objects in his office. Lots of people have done that, by the way. He also connected a wristband of sorts to his wrist, obviously, that connected to his nervous system so that he could control a bionic arm over the internet across the world, I believe in Tokyo. So he's often cited as the world's first human cyborg. Now, there are different animal cyborgs. There's been a cyborg rat, there have been cyborg cockroaches, there have been cyborg this or that. But overall, Kevin Warwick is generally cited as the world's first human cyborg. Now, what do we consider to be cyborgs? Generally, I think of a cyborg as somebody who has used technology in order to augment their already existing senses in order to add either new senses or enhanced senses to a human. So that's generally what I think of when I think of a cyborg. Now, there's all sorts of different definitions. I'm not sure if there is a unified definition that everyone sort of points to. Some people think of the Borg from Star Trek: Next Generation. Some people think more of somebody like a Terminator. Some people also think more of somebody who just has cybernetic implants, sort of like the $6 Million Man, which today would probably be $6 billion. People generally tend to cite those examples, though, and it's very wide-ranging. However, it can't be denied that we are quickly working towards those ends, and those might not even be the ends. The end might be a brain floating in a jar connected to all sorts of different sensory inputs in order to be completely, not necessarily immortal, but longer lasting than most. So who knows what end goal might be. There are also people such as Left Anonym, who's what commonly referred to as a biopunk, somebody who implants different things into or under the skin in order to enhance the senses. Quite a few people have implanted magnets, neodymium magnets, rare earth magnets, under their fingertips in order to sense magnetic fields and pick up items. And it's almost novelty. There's not really a whole lot of practical use for it, but it can be done. A lot of people are implanting programmed by them, RFID chips into their hands in order to unlock doors at their house, all sorts of different things. It's very interesting technology. I'm actually considering that one. I'm giving that one a bit of thought myself. So lots of different options for sort of a cybernetic future. Well, Google is investing in the cybernetic future, it would appear. So Google is now getting more and more fascinated with biometric security measures. According to a recent patent filing, the Mountain View, California search engine, according to Extreme Tech, is now looking to integrate fingerprint authentication into its latest Android M update that will fall this fall. In addition to Google's mobile efforts, the company has also been flirting with the idea of smart glasses, a la Google Glass, as well as smart contact lenses with an integrated camera for those who'd rather not bring too much attention to themselves. Google also aims to design smart biometric technology to aid the health of humanity with its smart contact lenses, which can detect blood sugar levels via tear ducts. But the company also sees technology in a broader light, including security. To this end, Google's latest patent shows that it's moving towards more secure forms of biometric identification, and iris fingerprints are much more difficult for a hacker to lift than hand fingerprints. It's been shown that fingerprints on the hand, on your fingers, are actually semi-easily hackable. And it's actually kind of frightening how easily hackable fingerprints are. I've seen videos of people who have opened unlocked cell phones with their elbows on a fingerprint scanner. So fingerprint scanners are not nearly as secure as you might think. If it exists, it can be hacked, is basically how it works. So if you have a fingerprint scanner on your iPhone, it can be hacked. That's just how it is. That's just technology. It can always be hacked. There's always a backdoor somewhere, and your elbow can act as a control method, oddly enough, for your cell phone. It's very strange how that works, but it does. The patent, which Google filed, dated June 2nd, 2015, covers a smart contact lens and a circuit containing the light sensors, which are situated very strategically and to form an iris fingerprint of an individual. This iris fingerprint, the iris, of course, is part of your eye, detected by light sensors, would then be compared with an iris fingerprint on a computing device, whether it be desktop or mobile, etc., for user authentication for a website or account, for example. As with prior smart contact patents, this iris fingerprint detection system presented here would also call for a wireless power source of some kind, be it via induction or what have you. Now, you potentially run into some danger with that. Obviously, induction power requires frequencies to be blasted at whatever is being powered. So also energy is almost always synonymous with heat. So you often see a raise in temperature along with a rise in power. So probably we might see some extra heat on the iris. I'm not sure how extreme that would be, if at all, or if it would be detectable by you at all, but that is something to be considered. Consider also that microwaves can cause pretty serious ear damage or eye damage and ear damage as well. So you have to be careful of these things, and we're talking about induction. Now, presumably, Google will do a ton of research into this, and it will use its incredible power as a company in order to do research into this to ensure that there aren't any lawsuits somewhere down the line of people claiming that they lost their vision because of induction power going towards their contact lens. So in line with its commitment to user identification and internet security, Google says that users can opt out of providing personal information with an iris fingerprint detection system, and that data could be anonymized while still safeguarding account users. Now, something to keep in mind is that there have been allegations floating about that Google hands over its information to the feds. This is likely. I'll put it that way. This is definitely a possibility that Google hands over its information to the feds, be it willingly or be it because they're strong-armed into doing so. Nevertheless, it does happen. So that being the case, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with having my iris data in the hands of a company such as Google which we are reasonably certain hands over some information to the feds, be it willingly or not, be it under subpoena and gag order or not. We don't know. Nevertheless, I'm not exactly comfortable with that intimate of information being given to a company. Seems a little bit shady to me. Irises are pretty unique. I've heard before that there are people who have fingerprints close enough to each other that they're almost undetectable, I should say. Twins sometimes have, identical twins have both the same DNA and same fingerprints, so that could be a problem. Not sure about same irises, though. I don't know about that. It's possible, but I'm not sure. Then, of course, there are people who don't have any eyes, but that's a rare enough occurrence that we could rule that one out, just as there are people who don't have arms and hands, so we could rule that one out. But still, an iris is a relatively unique thing, such as dental information. So not sure if I'd be comfortable with a company holding my dental information or my iris information, either one, really. That seems a little bit extreme for me, just saying. So that being the case, if suddenly all of our iris information is in the hands of some company and then the government subpoenas that company in order to obtain that iris information, now there's a database of all sorts of unique information about people that is extremely intimate. Now, of course, the government already has extremely intimate data on most people, if not all people. So it's unlikely that there be anything more there that the government want that they don't already have. So it's a difficult situation, but it's one that needs to be thought of anyway. Just as an aside, that something needs to be thrown out there is that most likely this iris information would be had by some government entity, be it US or otherwise. Smart contact lenses could serve a number of purposes just beyond biometric identification and measuring blood glucose levels. For one, smart contact lenses could also deliver medication doses over time, say each hour or two, instead of requiring patients to take large medication doses at once. Night vision would be another benefit of smart contact lenses, a huge help for those who have trouble seeing at night, such as visually impaired, of course. And tear ducts contain an ingredient called lacquer globin, which detects various cancers, be it breast cancer, lung, brain cancer, and so on. So smart contact lenses could help doctors and patients detect early and troubling signs or monitor for remission, which could be helpful for me because I have a family history of colon cancer. So that would be extraordinarily helpful for me. So it's all sorts of little developments that we don't really think of, but could be applicable to us, be it you, the listener, or be it me. There's all sorts of different technological advancements that are constantly helping us out in a lot of ways that we don't even think about. Google is but one of a few entities working on the future of contact lens technology. Swiss company Sensimed wants to use smart lenses to measure ocular inflammation in glaucoma patients. Seattle, Washington company Innovega is now setting its sights on creating smart lenses that can handle high-res displays while not affecting user vision. And the University of Michigan wants to create infrared lenses to provide night vision. How cool would it be, though, to put on some contact lenses and be able to see in the dark? I mean, come on, that would be pretty dang awesome. So I'm very much looking forward to this technology, especially the night vision bit. That would be so cool. Now, of course, the DoD, I'm sure, has set its sights on contact lenses and smart lenses in order to contract a company such as Boston Dynamics in order to create new technology so that we can kill people mo better. That seems to always be the goal of the DoD. So we can expect that the Department of Defense or the Department of Homeland Security, either one, is going to be putting a lot of its dollars, i.e. our dollars, into smart lenses so that they can be used in order to kill people in a much more effective and efficient way. So, hooray. The Sunday Times is upset and is throwing DMCA notices to critics of its Snowden hacking story. So the headline claimed that Russia and China got Snowden cache, and the article didn't really deliver. So it's the headline from the Sunday Times was "British spies betrayed to Russians and Chinese." Now this sounds like a very bombshell headline, right? It sounds very very clickbait, right? Most people get their news anyway from headlines. Most people don't actually, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people don't actually read beyond the headlines. A lot of people don't. Now, I'm sure you do, the listener, I'm sure you do, but a lot of people don't. It's very frustrating. For instance, you'll see people who are only getting their news from, say, Facebook, and they just scroll through all the headlines that their friends post. So they see something along the lines of like Obama death squad targeting gun owners, and they just see that and they go, man, it must be true then. And so they constantly think these things, and they might be wrong, they might not be, but it's not necessarily safe to get all of your information from the headlines, because there's stuff other than the headlines for a reason. It's a good idea to read stories from credible and reputable sources for a reason, because generally something like the anti-Obama news.net isn't exactly a reputable source. So it's important to check your sources and check your news sources when getting your news. By the way, this story comes from Ars Technica. So the Sunday Times dropped a bit of a bombshell this weekend, reporting that the top-secret files leaked by Edward Snowden had been obtained by the Russian and Chinese governments. The story claimed that Western intelligence agencies were forced into rescue operations, that's a quote, to mitigate the damage. And one UK government source claimed that Snowden had blood on his hands. Oh no. Well, it would be a major blow to Mr. Snowden and the journalists who worked with him if it were true. But the bold claims started falling apart shortly after it was published this weekend. The story is behind a paywall, but it is available elsewhere. It's based entirely on anonymous British officials and contains some glaring inaccuracies. That's something else to be cautious of. If a story has, say, a quote from a trusted source or an anonymous intelligence source, be cautious there, because it's not always what it might seem. If you're getting a story from a British government source who wants to remain anonymous, that could be a secretary of the front desk. You know, that's technically a British government source who wishes to remain anonymous. So you have to be very careful of these things. You don't really want to lend all of your to sort of rely on that as your source, because not exactly reliable or reputable. Well, a paywall, by the way, means that you can't get access to the story without being a subscriber to this particular news source. There are a lot of different whatchamacallit, I forgot the name of them. What do you call them? What's the old thing that people got their news from? Lots of different newspapers. Lots of different newspapers that will do that. I wish they wouldn't, because it's ridiculous and it's alienating a lot of potential readers, and stop doing paywalls. But anyway, it would be a major blow to Snowden and the journalists who worked with him if these allegations were true. Snowden confidant Glenn Greenwald immediately attacked this article from the Sunday Times as journalism at its worst. Greenwald is a pretty predictable critic of it, obviously, but the Times reporter Tom Harper was later questioned about his story on CNN, and he admitted that he's been unable to check out any of the far-reaching claims told to him by government sources, whoever they may be. The reporter answered one question after another with some version of "I don't know," admitting that he has no idea how any hack took place, or how or when any foreign governments got the files, or if the files were encrypted at all. Harper simply maintained that the Snowden hacking story was the official position of the British government. Frankly, I don't trust the official position of any government, so that's not exactly a close for me. That doesn't exactly give me any faith in his story, honestly. Because if I hear from official sources, that doesn't mean anything to me. Official sources lie all the time, so that doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. This morning, lawyers at the Times newspapers took a step in order to limit Greenwald's criticism, sending a notice telling The Intercept that Greenwald's story, which included a low-res image of the Times front page, violates their copyright. I guess journalistic purposes don't count. The Intercept was quickly published the takedown notice, and on Twitter, Greenwald made clear that his publication won't be deleting his copy of the Times' humiliating headline. The relevant portions of the copyright letter from the legal department of the Times says different things, including, "We write on behalf of the Times newspaper, saying that the TNL owns the copyright and the typographical arrangement, the front page of the Sunday Times, which you can easily look at on any newsstand, I'm sure, and a copy of the material appears at a link or the headline saying that Sunday Snowden story is journalism at its worst, filed with falsehoods, yada yada." Basically, they're very upset, and they're trying to censor this with copyright claims. The so-called infringing picture that The Intercept used, a picture of the Sunday Times front page reproduced in part, doesn't have sufficient resolution to allow the article to be read, and Greenwald didn't reproduce the Times story in full, although considering how much he had to say about the piece, doing so would likely be well within his rights, because it would count definitely as commentary. So it's I'm not sure if there'd be any problem with that anyway, because it would be commentary. You can do commentary. That falls under fair use. Of course, that falls under fair use in the United States. It's a little bit different in the UK. Different countries have different copyright law, but fair use tends to remain. The song stays the same. The song remains the same, I should say, across party lines. So anyway, the Times behavior since publication has become a perfect example of why outside criticism and fact-checking are extremely necessary. The article's most glaring error, which is a statement from Greenwald's partner, David Miranda, who visited Snowden over in Moscow, was deleted without any notice. A Times spokesperson promised that there would be a correction in the Sunday edition. So it appears that this is a very pro-government stance from the newspaper, the Sunday Times, taking a very pro-government stance. We're kind of used to that over here. Hot News Talk Radio, we're used to different news organizations taking a very pro-government stance, pro-government bias. It's just something that we're used to. There's no such thing as a lack of bias. Every news story has a bias, and we recognize that, and that's just the nature of the business. So every reporter, every news story, everything has a bias of some sort. That's just something that we have to get used to. That's just a fact of life that we are all very, very well accustomed to in the world of journalism. However, a extreme bias, such as the one that seemed to be displayed in that particular newspaper, is less than trustworthy, I would say. It's a little bit over the top, the bias which was displayed there. However, they're free to make that bias. They're free to publish what they will, so long as it doesn't fall into the realm of libel or slander. They're free to publish what they will. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't have published what they published, but I will say that definitely fact-checking and some extreme analysis are worthy. Definitely, it's worthy of extreme analysis and fact-checking, and it seems that they're afraid of that because they attempt to have stories removed if there is any sort of fact-checking or analysis. So the story also asserts that it isn't clear whether Russia and China stole Snowden's data, or whether he voluntarily handed over his secret documents, or I would posit that possibly neither of those are true. Of course, if Snowden handed over the documents willingly, it's not clear why they would need to be cracked by foreign governments, because wouldn't he also give them the encryption key, you'd think? Further, Snowden and the journalists working with him have stated that he kept no files after handing them to journalists in Hong Kong. Obviously, that would be extremely dangerous to keep government secrets on your person while on an international flight. I cannot stress enough how dangerous that is and how easy it would be to land yourself in the security room of some airport somewhere, being stripped naked and probably tased with a cattle prod and all that sort of thing. So I wouldn't really want to risk that, carrying government secret files on my person while flying international. I wouldn't even want to keep a laptop on me while flying international, honestly. I just don't trust airports. I don't trust the TSA. I don't trust any airport establishment ever. I just don't. I wouldn't carry anything valuable on an airplane ever, because it just seems like a very poor idea. Now, if there was no TSA, maybe the TSA has been known, it's very well documented, to say misplace items. We'll put it that way. So I wouldn't want to carry my electronics onto an airplane, because I wouldn't want my items to go missing or become misplaced. The story asserts, of course, that Snowden handed over documents, or possibly they were stolen from him by the Chinese or Russian governments, the two big boogeymen these days. The quote suggesting that Snowden has blood on his hands is immediately followed by a statement noting that there is no evidence of anyone being harmed. So I'm not sure how they can say that. This man's a murderer, although there's no evidence of it, is essentially what they're saying. It's very misleading, to say the least. This is a story that seems to be very well tailored towards the anti-Snowden people who think that there are certain things that we just shouldn't know, who believe that there are certain things that the government keeps from us for good reason, and that tends to not actually be the case. I would prefer to know everything that the government has to offer, because I really don't want there to be any secrets kept from me. I especially want to know the identities and locations of CIA agents, if anyone has those. I'm very interested in that. Other critics have suggested that the story's timing is no coincidence, having come just days after a 373-page report was published in the UK critical of the nation's terrorism laws. The report's author, David Anderson, called the current system undemocratic, unnecessary, and in the long run, intolerable. Well, it's probably true, actually. It seems that our way of handling terrorism is despotic, to say the least. Well, this is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. The show we talk about technology and quite a bit more. Nuganomics.com and David Toulis is coming up in just a few seconds right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. If you're looking to get a car, go to Automax. It's Automax at 643-2886 and ask for Louis. You can rebuild credit and often get a car for $2,000 less than the competition.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? Just think I know nothing of the matter. Don't worry,
Just relax, you need a car. Come to Autolux.
My wife and I keep the cost down. We sell a quality vehicle at a great price. Our overhead is low. I have no employees, so I can keep my costs down. In turn, the consumer gets a better price. Everything that I sell is emission ready. We really try to go the extra mile for our customer. I don't have to pay an employee commission. I don't have to pay somebody to come out here and wash my cars. You know, I do it all from buying to selling from A to Z. I don't have the overhead where I have to raise the price on my vehicle to cover